let's get started. So Michele Hornish from I didn't say Every State Blue. I just said Small D's Done because I wanted to talk about it. And Lynlee Thorne from World Ground Game, and you've already told folks who you are. But did you tell them that you had this little procedure done and you're wearing sunglasses because of it, right?
Yes. So I just
Yes.
had a little procedure done the other day. Gonna be wearing sunglasses for a while. So
Well, we want to celebrate you for a minute.
Right. So we're gonna join you and wear sunglasses so that it can just be, three
thank
ladies in sunglasses.
I appreciate the
No
Yeah,
problem.
solidarity.
so for
Solidarity.
those of you, so when people are asking why do we have glasses on, you guys are here. You can go in the chat and say they have on sunglasses because they are celebrating Lindley. She has a little procedure done. She's wearing glasses. She was feeling a little weird about it. And we just wanted her to know that we were way okay and we were so grateful that she's here.
Yes,
So there you go.
Thank you.
And the last point that I would make about it is that we look really cool too. But
I think so.
okay.
There's that.
I think so too. But let's talk about a little bit about why we wanted to have this conversation today with the two of you. So, yeah, I've been thinking a lot about how regular people are thinking about all of the stuff that's happening and how we're talking about it. And we're going to do that. But I just wanted to sort of think about and hear you guys talk about what makes you happy. What have you been doing that makes you happy? Michelle, what have you been doing that sort of makes your day?
Oh gosh, what do I do that makes my day? I watercolor. I don't know that a lot of people knew that, but I do. And so lately, I've been getting out my paints and my brushes, and I've been getting some watercoloring in, just to beautiful summer scenes. So yeah, this is
Yeah.
just something different. What about you, Lindley?
I would like to see some of your work. Um, yeah, I just tilled up 3 huge rows on my hillside and planted thousands and thousands of wildflowers. Sunflowers are my favorite, and I planted some big, like 12-foot tall sunflowers. There's not really a practical reason for that, but getting sweaty and working in the dirt has always kind of brought me back to center. And I'm looking forward to some amazing flowers coming up in the next few weeks.
There's something about that, isn't there? Like it's almost a moving meditation where you're actually getting out there and you're doing something physical and you can be thinking about something or not thinking about anything at all, but then you come back in all refreshed.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think kind of like your watercolor, like the
Yeah.
work we do in politics, sometimes you can't necessarily tell immediately what you're producing, what you're making happen. And I think we all need that to keep going, to feel like what we're doing matters. And sometimes you just need a win. So if you can paint a picture or plant some seeds, and see that transform, then it's motivation to keep going in the other work that we do.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, there's a lot to gardening that painting and gardening is really similar. I have a friend who's a really excellent artist and an amazing gardener. And she has always said that she paints with flowers when she's gardening. Because you're thinking about the transformation of something over time. And it's the same thing with a painting and watercolor in particular, because you have to appreciate your mistakes. You
You
can't
don't
have
have to
too
take them
tight,
back.
you can't have a tight idea
So
if you want.
So let me say this, and Margaret says she loves us all. We love you too. Thank you. And thank you, Courtney. As Courtney is celebrating you, so we love that too. And thank you all for being here and thank you for coming back. We really appreciate it. So this is what I've been thinking about today is that all of this stuff is happening. And sometimes when I'm driving along and I look at the car next to me, it just feels like they're just I assume that they're really happy, and I feel like sometimes I'm carrying the weight of the world on my shoulders because you pay attention to this stuff all the time. So, talk a little bit about how you all think about this. Like when you are, absorbing all of this information that seems to be coming and hitting you, how do you absorb it? How do you think about it? And then how do you get it back out into the world? Lindley.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a person too. So, even though I do this work every day, there's an emotional toll and it feels really, really heavy. And I it helps me to see images. And when I was about 14 years old, I was traveling with my family. My dad, when he was in the U.S. Army, he served in Germany. And when I was a teenager, he wanted to take me back to some of the places where he served. And during that time, we visited Dachau, a concentration camp. And there's a photo on the wall in this room where bodies had been placed outside of the gas chamber. And the room is empty, but you're standing in the room where
Mhm, mhm,
and on the wall are pictures of Allied soldiers marching the people who lived next to this camp, marching them through the camp when they came through to liberate.
Yeah.
And there's this image of this woman who's just like, kind of clutching her chest in horror,
mhm,
just seeing what was happening. And I think I don't want to be her. I don't want to know.
mhm,
I would rather be in solidarity with my fellow human beings. I would rather lock arms with the people who are most threatened and most harmed. And that feels like grief. That feels like pain. And that is part of what is required is to allow yourself to experience some of that. And that's not easy. But we all have to think about who we want to be right now. Because, like with Michelle's watercolors, like you don't get to take back a mistake, and either you grow from that and you learn from that and you allow that to transform you. And I'm looking at this picture of this woman on the wall who I don't think did enough. And
mhm,
there's a sidebar there that talks about who these people were, so I'm not just guessing. It the soldiers were really, really angry that these people were so close by, and a lot of them just they froze, and maybe they acted like the people that you're describing, Finale, who are just kind of going about their daily life and not allowing this in and not allowing it to affect them. It hurts for that to be the
mhm.
case. It is heavy to carry around. But if you're somebody who's doing that or thinking about allowing that in, then you get to know that you're somebody who is going to look at the moment that we're in, understand how serious and heavy it is, and be willing to show. Am I allowed to cuss on here? I won't. You're willing. Show up. I don't do well in conversation without being able to cuss, but I'm
Times
So
are such that I think it would
so
be okay.
you can curse. And Michelle, the same question for you because the next question that I'm gonna ask, and I'll answer for myself too, is, you know, how you think about it. And then how do you because there's so much stuff happening, you sort of have to pick and choose because that's sort of the point. There's just stuff happening every day. Just like the Supreme Court decisions that came out every day this week, there was something that came out and it was worse than the other. And even the thing that was supposed to be the good thing really wasn't a good thing at the end of the day. But I can tell you, you could probably go out on the street and ask 10 people what Supreme Court decision they heard over this week and last week that they can tell you what the impact was to them, and they probably can't. But Michelle,
Yeah,
talk to
I
us
mean,
about how you do this.
so one of the things that I think it's important for people to understand and for me to validate this is that they understand very well what they're doing from a psychological standpoint. A very confused and overwhelmed society is a quiet one, right?
Mhm,
The people who lived outside Dachau were able to convince themselves that nothing really all that bad could be going on behind those walls. They were able to do that because they had other things going on, and I'm sure there was a lot of information that was coming at them. They are not without blame whatsoever, but that is a strategy, and it's the same
mhm,
strategy that this administration has been using against us, frankly, since 2016, when there has been just a fire hose of difficult things that we have had to deal with, and had to manage. And even now, even at this point, people can still look around and wonder, are we really there? Is this really that bad? And people start to kind of question, right? We all do that. Am I overreacting? And then you look at everything that's happened and you almost have to catalog it in your head and think through like all the various different things that have fallen away and all the things that we have lost in order to stand and say, yeah, this really is that bad. This really is like the worst case scenario of worst case scenarios. I'm not overthinking. I'm not over dramatizing things. I'm not, being hysterical here. This is really as serious as what it is. And I think that paying attention to the news and looking at those things is really important for me to stay firm in my personal, like, validating
Mhm.
for myself personally, like, yes, this is bad. This is really bad. It's helpful because I'm a trained lawyer, and so I can look back at my expectations, for the rule of law and how the rule of law will be followed. I think it's probably harder for people who are younger and
Mhm.
who frankly have grown up in this kind of chaotic environment since 2016. I know it's very hard. My son is 14 and he really he's known Trump, Biden, Trump,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
that's kind of it. And so for him, this kind of chaotic, scene is frankly more common than not. Um, but I think that's really important for people to remember. This is part of their strategy. That's what they're doing, is trying to overwhelm you, trying to confuse you, so that you'll stay quiet and compliant.
Yeah, one of the things so there are some things that sort of stick with me, and I know this is probably sounds really down for people listening to this right now. Hi, Catherine. But I think this is important for us to talk about in terms of sometimes you do have to sort of because we're going to get to what we do, the work that we try to do, how we think about this. But I read this article yesterday, and my sister knows I read it, and it was about two young boys. They were twins, 19 years old, in 2025, in Georgia, and they were 19 and they were missing. Their parents found them missing. So they out looking for them. And they found them 90 miles away on a mountain in Georgia where they both had committed suicide. They killed themselves. They're
God.
19 years old. And so my sister and I were talking about it to say what would make um two 19-year-olds, their families are looking at them to say, you know, they have everything in the world to be happy about. And there was one of them, they were talking to one of their relatives and they said, "What would you like to do?" And she's like something like, "No, I want to really be able to dance." And he says to her, "I hope you do that." So there was something. And I started to think about the way that two 19-year-olds might look at the world today. They see their job prospects. They see all the chaos. They see all of the unhappiness. And they were Black. They were two young Black men. And I could also think about what it felt like to be a young Black man, 19 years old, who may be a consumer of the news, looking at this world today, and looking at how people are being treated and what must it feel like. And so I think that that is sort of sometimes the heaviness that I want other people to feel, not so they just feel heavy, but they feel like they have the capacity now to be able to explain that and talk to other people and have empathy about what it feels like to walk in someone else's shoes in this environment that we find ourselves in. And so the other thing that I wanna ask you guys, when so now that you have this, and then now you have to put information out to say to people, "Here's why you ought to be, paying attention to what's going on. Here's why this thing that you heard in the news, should matter to you or could matter to you." And then how do you find joy on the other side in terms of what we hope for the future for your 14-year-old, what we might hope for the future of our nieces and nephews? How do you talk about that to get to that place from this place?
Yeah. I mean, I think this is why what Mayor Mamdani is doing in New York is so important because we're locked into this place of legitimate feelings of despair. I mean, that's how they win if we allow ourselves to be stuck there. So we really have to have community to yank each other out of that,
Mhm,
and not allow that. But we also need something hopeful. We need to see some type of reality that is working. And I think what Mayor Mamdani is doing is something that I talk to my 17 and 14-year-old about. That gives me something to say to them, like, look, he froze the rent. They said he couldn't do it. And it wasn't just having a big policy idea, it was surrounding himself with these incredible experts who had been working on this for years and years and years. And he came and communicated this to the people of New York, and they believed him, and he's getting it done. And just seeing good governance, seeing government work for people, and seeing a mayor who's, speaking at the prison graduation and
Right.
jumping into the pool with kids, and like there's joy, there's a lot of hard work that he's doing, and it won't be easy, and he's not perfect, but there's a lot of joy that he's bringing to the table. And it's so nice to point to something and be hopeful. And I think if people see that, they're going to start to expect, hey, maybe government can work for me. And I think that's why we're seeing this like really exciting, interesting shift within the Democratic Party, with what people are saying they want, and they don't want us to screw around and tell them to wait their turn. And we're just gonna, come back to the pre-Trump days, because that wasn't even that great either. We can do better. And so I'm inspired by that. It's heavy, but we have to tell our young people that there is a world worth fighting for, and that they might be one of the problem solvers that we need. And I'll just end by saying I'm seeing this at town halls across Virginia as we're engaged on the data center issue. And of all the things I learned in our most recent town hall, the thing that I love so much is that the community came together. It was their chance to speak, not be talked at by their elected officials or by big tech bros. And people were finding each other, and individuals who weren't connected to the organizing work got connected. And you're seeing people who feel like they're up against uh, extreme odds, like literally a trillionaire,
Mhm.
deciding to show up and figure out which papers to sign and lawsuits to file and neighbors to partner with. And I think that Mamdani kind of model is a thing that feeds the aspirations of other people to make them feel like change is possible.
I mean, that's
Yeah.
incredible. That's just incredible to think of all of those people, sort of joining with one another and finding what each other needs. And I love that kind of organizing, and I know that the data center issue is such a massive one. I mean, I too am inspired by Mamdani. The fact that he's been able to get so much done, um, with such a joyful in such a joyful manner has been, I think that it's like that cool drink of water in the desert, where we're all going along and looking for what it is that we're supposed to be fighting for, and then we see someone who says, "Of course we can get that done. I'm gonna get that done in 6 months." That's not going to take me 4 years.
Yeah.
And it's been a really long time, since we've had a leader who has been able to come at very difficult policy issues, which he has tackled, um, with that kind of speed. That's really special. We all hear about, the first 100 days, and that was from FDR, and he's sort of, a mayoral FDR, but he's actually pushing things even further, I think, than FDR would have. I'm impressed. I'm excited to see what happens in the future in New York. I'm excited to see how his policies and his attitude around his policies, how those impact the Democratic Party and candidates within the Democratic Party, even if it doesn't impact the Democratic Party as a whole, how individual candidates take that and run with it. Because we know that Democratic policies are popular. We know that. But we've had too many people say, well, we can't get it done though, because we don't have the right majority, or, we don't have the right numbers here or there. People don't want to hear that. What they want to hear is what you will do and what you can do and what you're going to try to do and what you're going to fight to do. And that is the piece that I think he brings to the table that we can really, really watch go.
Yeah, I think we have sold the American people short in terms of helping them understand what we can do, what we can do, and then for those things that we want to do, what we have to do. I hear your cat. I know it's making you crazy. So funny.
He wants to be on my
So
Zoom calls, so I
I
might
know he wants to be
come here
wants to
for
be on
that.
your Zoom call. Robin's cats always want to be on her Zoom calls.
Yeah,
And so what I would say is that we sold them short by not telling them how for certain things. So, for example, if you say like what he's doing, you say how he's doing that. But if you want more, here's what we have to do. And
right,
here's where the fight has to be. And the
right.
fight just can't be in blue states. It's got to be
That's
in red states. It's got to be everywhere because there are
the
people
thing.
everywhere who want the same things, who want affordable housing, who want affordable health care, who want to buy prescription drugs, who want to go on vacations, who want to do all the things that everybody else wants to do. Everybody's not trying to be a trillionaire. They are not trying to be billionaires or even millionaires. They just want to be able to support their families. And I think the thing is that there's this idea that if someone gets something, if I give something to an immigrant, if I give something to a minority, if I give something to these people who are other than me, that something is being taken from
Sure.
me. And I think the point is that while they're having them look at immigrants or while they're having them look at someone else that they're othering, it is actually the billionaires and this oligarchy class that's actually picking their pockets and taking all of the things. And so I think we have to make sure that we're talking often enough to the American people to let them know that they're not sell short, like they can't understand and believe what we have to do. I wanted to bring up one other point when you talked about what Mandami and what he was doing. Uh, there's this book by Malcolm Gladwell. I talk about it all the time. There are just few things and authors that I talk about all the time because I think that everybody should talk about it. But he has this book, it's David and Goliath. And I think that if there was ever a David and Goliath moment, it is now because we are all the Davids right now while we have all of these billionaire classes and all of these things that are colliding, all of these things that are happening and folks will believe that we will fail. And what we have to do is be very optimistic about the fact that we won't fail because we are the Davids. And with the Davids, you may have just your slingshot while they have all of this other stuff, but we have this people power and this will that says that we're going to be creative and we're going to be thoughtful and we're going to figure it out. And we have to give people that optimism that no matter who they are, that they can win. And part of that is by trusting and telling them the truth, all of it. What do you guys think about that?
I mean, I think that's true. I also think that, you know, Americans are spunky, and I like that spunk. We've always been spunky. Yeah, I wrote about that in Small Deeds this week because obviously it's 4th of July. And the 4th of
Mhm,
July, and I made this point, this week that the 4th of July, we celebrate the day that the Declaration of Independence was signed. We don't celebrate the day of the Treaty of Paris. Treaty of Paris happened 7 years after, the Declaration of Independence was signed. We don't celebrate that. We celebrate the day that we decided to try. We celebrate the day that we decided as a country that we were going to go for it. And we didn't know how that was going to go, but we decided to give it a shot because we weren't willing to be led this way anymore. We weren't willing to be governed like this anymore. And I think we're back in that same space. And so this year for the 4th of July, I've really been thoughtful about that because we're being asked to recommit to this very old idea. And that's why a lot of times when I'm looking at the 4th of July celebrations that are being, promoted around the
mhm,
country and the Great American State Fair, they look very hollow, but they also look like a question mark, right? Like what do
mhm.
we want to do? Are we willing to go for this again? Are we willing to fight for this again? And what do we really want? And what are we willing to fight for?
Yeah. And I think a lot of the reason why we're here is we didn't do a very good job of it the first time. And we stole land and we stole human beings and we built a country on stolen labor and stolen human rights. We failed at that. And Fanal, you were talking earlier about, how do you talk to people about if I'm not taking from you or you're not taking from me if you get rights. And we have a long way to go. White women in this country, the majority of us supported Donald Trump in the last election. We're not near where we need to be. And I think, like, I love what Michelle said, that we celebrate the day we decided to try. I love that, because we're all being asked to try. We're all being asked to be uncomfortable, to carry this around and then do something. And I don't know what that will be for everyone watching, but again, sorry to, like, just more recent example of being in these data center meetings. Um, there was a local group giving a presentation about the data centers that were proposed in their area. And they kept mentioning during their presentation, well, Dave or whoever sent in the FOIA request. Well, Dave sent in the FOIA request. Dave wasn't there at this event, but like Dave's job is to demand transparency of his local government by sending them every damn FOIA request and then sharing that with his community who's organizing around it and filing lawsuits and doing the thing. So, like, who are you? Are you the FOIA guy? Or are you, are you pulling events together? Are you showing up at protest? Are you organizing to get out the vote? Where is your voice in this process? And there's so many different ways that people can participate, but you should celebrate the day you decide to try. That requires bravery. That requires a little bit of recklessness. That requires us to dream about a reality that isn't this one. And and we can get there, and it will probably be ugly. But I think what I hope is that we have to deal with the racism. We have to deal with the patriarchy. We have to deal with that. And if we don't fundamentally deal with those things and come to grips with the truth of our history and how we got here and allow ourselves to grieve that and look right at it and, and then build our systems as they would be built by the people we've hurt the most, because I think that's how we will set ourselves free. And I think we're still a
So
long way from convincing enough of us, but I see us getting there.
so I'm glad you mentioned that, because when we have Miss Margaret on our show, she always sort of brings us back to say, okay, let's get to the root cause of why we are where we are. And I do wonder sometimes about how we get there, and what it's going to look like. Like, for example, because Sam will say this to me, don't take it so personally. But if I am driving along in my car and I pass by someone and there's a Trump sticker or a Trump flag or any of that, I have a visceral response to that,
Mm,
because what it says to me is, oh, that person is hateful. Whether that person believes it or not, or says it or not, that's what it says to me. They're hateful. They're one of the people who, hold up the signs that say mass deportation. They're one of the people who are okay with calling countries shithole countries. They're one of the people who are okay with, people being in these concentration camps. And so that is what it says to me. Those are one of the people who thinks that because I'm a Black woman, I'm a DEI hire for whatever I do, that I am less than, that I am less than. So every time I see someone celebrating Trump or talking about him or doing any of those things, it is a visceral response for me, because it says to me who they are. And
sure.
the other day, I made a response to someone, and I said, the woman had on a Trump hat, and someone said something, and I said, and when I see a Trump hat, to me, it's a swastika. It feels no different in terms of the way that I feel that they treat me, but or would treat me. But Lindley and Michelle, you both had the same reaction one day when we were chatting, and I said to you, you know, if we're going to get to the bottom of this, we have to say this. Those There'll be coalitions built, and it'll be all kinds of people building them. And I said, you don't have to like me because I'm Black. You don't have to invite me to dinner. You don't have to invite my family to dinner. You don't have to, want me to come to my house or me yours. You don't have to do any of that because you don't like me. It's okay. But what we can agree on is that rich people, the billionaires, should pay fair taxes. And we can agree that we don't want to live under a dictator. And we can agree, on a multitude of things. And for those things that we can't agree on, what I was so happy to find was Dr. King, in his 1963 letter from Birmingham. And what he said was, It may be true that morality cannot be legislated, but behavior can be regulated. It may be true that law cannot change the heart, but it can restrain the heartless. It may be true that the law cannot make a man love me. Religion and education will have to do that, but it can restrain him from lynching me. And I think that's pretty important also. So, so I love that when we sort of think about all of this when we're talking to people, is that we're just not going to make everybody love everybody. It's just never going to be that way.
Right.
But we all can demand that we stand for a justice system, that we stand for a country that respects everybody, and that the laws should require that to happen. And I think that is how we get to the truth to some of these folks to say, okay, we're here, but this is how this must be. How does that hit you all?
I
I mean,
think it's both and. I think it's a both and. Like, we wanna clear the bar of collectively caring enough, giving enough of a damn about the survival of our neighbors that we are restrained from harming them, but that's the minimum, and I think we should go farther than that. I think we should do both because immediately we need to save people, we need to haul them out of the stream, and we need to figure out how to unpack some of our toxic baggage and build a world where we do love each other, in at least in a way that is not restraint from harm, but wanting good. Wanting good things for your neighbor would be where I would like to see us go.
Michelle.
yeah, I mean, I think that we have so many issues right now with looking at someone who's wearing a MAGA hat and looking at someone who's wearing MAGA merchandise. I feel the same way that you do. I know that that is a statement that they have, that they're making outwardly, happily, by their own volition, that they agree with something that I find abhorrent. And I think that it shows a lot of their policies, a lot of their legislators even create laws that have the effect, maybe the intent to dehumanize people. The way that they act, the way that they talk, the way that they frame things, it's all about dehumanizing neighbors. I think we need to find, like Lindley was saying, it's a both and. We need to bring back the rule of law and protecting people, period. But we also need to reintroduce this communal sense of humanity. They have ripped that apart in a lot of ways for a lot of people. And it's going to take a lot of work, societal work, cultural work, for us to be able to bring that back. I mean, we have examples from Germany about, how they sort of managed to bring people's awareness around to all the horrors that had happened after that war. And I think that we're going to have to do some really deep digging and have that same kind of exploration here in the United States. I hope that people are already starting to consider that. I think it's really important because this didn't happen overnight. This happened over decades, and that kind of dehumanization happened over decades. We we can't continue on that path. We have to figure out a better way.
Yeah. One of the things that I think will happen or will need to happen is, you know, we're going to go through the election, and when if we do all of our work like the Davids that we're supposed to and that we have to that we must do, we will win the election, and we will win. And actually, part of it really does have to be about winning the hearts and minds of people, and that may be what's happening in New York. That Mandami is winning the hearts and minds of people by speaking to the things that they care about the most, about what makes my life better. What and that you're willing to fight for what makes my life better. You win hearts and minds. And so I think that once we win hearts and minds of people, and I think that, even Democrats that we may not be happy with, they're not trying to do the things that Republicans are sprouting and talking about. They're not. And I do think that there is an opportunity for us to raise our own selves, our own party to say, we are not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. but we are definitely not delivering that to people. And I don't think that that's a low bar. I think that's a pretty high bar in terms of just the humanity that we expect of people and that we will work hard to deliver. And then when it comes to the policy, when we're really listening to people and to people who may not have said, you know what, I haven't done that, but maybe this time I'll do something different because you can change. You don't have to do the same thing that you've always done. You can do something different. You can do something different. And I do think that comes from talking to friends and family and folks who may not have seen things the way that we see them to know that you can change your mind. And I think that's where we have to get people to that you can change your mind. But we work with people to get hearts and minds so that they trust that we have their best interest. And that is what makes me excited. That is what makes me keep on doing what I do, even though sometimes it feels like it's not enough. It never feels like it's enough. But it's what makes me want to wake up in the morning, even when I'm tired, and try to figure out what is the thing, what is the thing I can do today that will hopefully lift someone's spirits or my spirits or make it better in some way. That's how I try to stay hopeful.
I mean, I think it reminds me of some of the conversations that I've been having with nominees. We support, I'm the co founder and executive director of Every State Blue, which supports down ballot nominees who are running in some of the reddest areas in Missouri, Ohio, and Tennessee, and then all over the country. With a different program that we have that's crowdfunding for them. But I talk to a lot of nominees as part of that work. And these are people who are running in red spaces. And Lynlee, I know that you work with, the same kinds of folks, right? Where I'm having conversations with people who've already knocked 14, 15,000 doors now, already have knocked that many. And they've told me that they are broadening the number of people that they speak to. So, normally they would only go to, fully like most likely to be Democrat, right? So on the
Mhm.
scale, there's a scale, and they typically will be knocking on Democratic doors. Not anymore. They're knocking way deep into Republican territory, and everybody that they talk to is just blown back that they've actually met them at their door. A guy said in Ohio, in a district that one of our Blue Ohio nominees took from 70-30 to 60-40 last cycle, the guy opened the door and said, "I've lived in this house for 30 years and no one has ever come to my door. But you came to my door. I'm going to vote for you. I don't agree with you, but I'm going to
Mm,
vote for you." And that's what I'm talking about. It's this kind of that too is humanity. We've
mhm,
lost
mhm.
so much. People feel so invisible. They feel unseen. They feel like they don't matter, that nothing that they say is going to make a difference, that their vote doesn't matter. None of it matters. That's what they think. And then somebody shows up, a down ballot candidate who's running for state house in Ohio shows up and knocks on the door and makes somebody feel seen. And that gives me hope. That is incredible. That's what I love to support, people that are doing that kind of thing, because that's going to really change this country.
Absolutely.
So, Lindsay, what do you want to say about that?
No, I mean, no notes. I've heard the story and experienced it myself so many times, and I think to the bigger picture, when you were talking about Dr. King's letter from a Birmingham jail, and we're talking about like yes to that, and let's do the community building. And one of many ways you can do that is knock a stranger's door and show that you give a damn about them and look them in their eyes and hear about their family and hear about what they're going through and listen and be present. And that sounds really, I don't know, easy, but not a lot of people want to do that. I mean, a lot of
No.
people, we really struggle to get people to go and knock doors. And I think part of that is we're not starting early enough. So I'm thrilled to hear what Michelle is saying, that she's talking to Democratic nominees in these state houses who have already knocked thousands and thousands of doors, because that's it. Like that is what it will take. It's the timing, it's the consistency. You can never let up. And that's why we need more people in this work. And I know I've taken people knocking doors for their first time. Like I've gotten to be honored to have that experience many times. And I've literally, even the first door that I took this one guy to, this lady cussed us out.
Oh no.
Like, oh God, no, like not we can't
What
go
a
to
great
this door.
story they got,
And
though.
he was driving me around and he was like, "Oh, I think I'll go to this door with you." And the first door, and she cussed us out. But you know what? We got back in the car and I'm like, "Oh, man, he's never going to another door." He's like, "All right, where are we going next?" And he got out and he went to the next door and that was a good conversation. But I promise usually that first door is almost never, ever, ever like that. But it's just be with somebody and take a first step and like celebrate the day you decide to try. And that's just more of us need to decide to try. And I have to remind myself to get up and try some days because this is hard, but we help each other do that.
So, Julie Pryor loves you. She loves Every State Blue, Michelle. I wanted you to
Oh,
know that.
thanks,
So I
Julie.
want to I
That's
just want
nice.
to say a couple things before we end because we're way over, but I didn't give us the time for this tonight, so we could talk as long as we want to. But Michelle, you do some fun stuff in terms of with astrology, and I thought that it would be really cool tonight as we end for you to sort of give us a little bit of what we should be thinking about based on what is happening with this really, really hot weather. What is crossing up to cause this weather to be so, so hot, and what should we be looking forward to? And it should be good news because this is good news time.
Well, it's climate change is what's causing the hot weather. That's
Thank
what we're dealing with. No, no, to be honest, I don't know if there's anything astrologically that is going on to make the weather as steamy and hot as it is. I have seen, though, I do follow quite a few astrologers, including Chani, Chani. If anyone is interested in following her, she's on all of the socials, and she's been saying lots of things. A lot of astrologers have been saying lots of things about July being a really big month for changes in leadership. And I'll just leave it there.
Okay.
So I hear that
Okay.
the president is supposed to be giving a really long, he said, a 70-minute speech outside on the 4th of July, and I think he should wear his heaviest wool coat for that event.
You know, I heard that Barack Obama once gave a speech when it was like 100, I think it was 102, and I'm pretty sure he was wearing a wool suit. He must have talked for
I
like,
think
I
you're
don't know,
right.
5 hours or maybe
Well,
longer. So, you know, maybe somebody wants
you know, I heard that Barack Obama once came into the White House and he had on a tan suit. The world moved. I'm just saying.
yeah.
So it
Yeah.
could be anything. So Michelle and Lindley, I can't tell you how happy I am to talk with you guys. And I'm hoping that we can do this some more, that you guys will find the time to do this some more. Everybody who
Really.
joined us tonight, I am so sorry. I don't know why I keep having that weird thing happen with this whole echo thing, but it was what it
Oh,
was. But Michelle, you guys are you're just pros at this. So I'm
You know
hoping.
what I will say? I will say this about astrology because I do know that Mercury is in retrograde right now, and that causes anything with technology apparently to kind of go a little bit haywire. So, anyone who's watching, cross your I's and dot your T's with your emails. Make sure that you're not hitting reply all for the next few weeks. It could be a little bit dicey. So,
good.
that's
Mhm,
always good practice
mhm. I
anyway.
I I have a feeling that this is operator era, in some way, and so I am just gonna own it and say, I am so sorry, but I am so glad for all of you who stayed with us anyway, and Lindley and Michelle, we're gonna do this again because you guys are pretty fantastic, and there's, like, so much stuff that I wanted to talk about that we didn't even get to touch, and so you guys we have to do this again, the 3 of us, because it is on the road with Fennell and Michelle and Lindley, and so this is summertime, so we're gonna be on the road this summer tackling a whole bunch of stuff. So we hope that all of you will join us again. So thanks, everyone, and good night.
Bye,
Good
y'all.
Thanks,
night.
Thank you.
everyone. Bye.